Welcome to Construction Revolution.
The revolution in the construction industry isn't just coming, it's already started.
This is Construction Revolution.
Construction Revolution.
This is the
This
revolution.
is the revolution.
Construction
Revolution.
Revolution.
Podcast. I'm Matthew Newberger, and I'm here with my friend Stuart Seiden, and we're going to be talking about project or construction partnering today. So that's going to be our topic, but keep in mind that everything we do in the Construction Revolution podcast is to understand how you become better as a project manager, as a construction manager, as a project coordinator. It doesn't matter what you do in terms of construction, general construction, whether you're the subcontractor, whether you're a supplier, or today, even if you're the owner. Everything we do is about evolving your business, how you play a part in construction, and how you make the industry better. And the way we get better is by evolving and learning. So today we're going to learn some things that are very important if you're a general contractor or a subcontractor or a supplier, or again, like I said, most importantly, an owner. So Stuart, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. It's great to be here today.
Well, and you're doing us a huge favor because the things we're going to talk about today could literally change the course of an owner's project. It could change the course of how a general contractor works or even the subs work. So, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background before we get into who you are, who IPI is. Maybe if you could share a little bit with our listeners on, what your background is and what you're passionate about and maybe what your vision for the future of construction looks like.
Well, my background is as an architect, and predominantly non-residential projects. So I spent about half my career in private practice and the other half in public practice. So I've kind of seen both sides of the table and understand the differences there are, and as well as what the similarities are. So, and in my public practice, I was basically responsible for developing the entire project. So, from land acquisition all the way through move-in and maintenance as well. So,
A lot of detail.
It's quite a lot of detail, a lot of education. So, and not every architect has that, that background and that knowledge. So, I went to school and graduated in architecture, and then also took construction engineering because I thought that I really wanted to go into construction engineering, construction management. Then when I figured out that I was going to have to move all around the United States every few years following the projects, I said, I'm really not interested in that. So I kind of liked settling down and being in one place. But really I'm here to, an IPI is here to kind of change the culture of the construction industry, to get it from more adversarial to becoming more collaborative. And that's really our essence. IPI is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Our stress is education of partnering, and so that's really our focus. So we're doing, we do research on partnering just to find, the best ways to do things, as well as to teach people how to partner. And so that's, those are some of our emphasis.
Well, and teaching people how to partner is a tricky thing, isn't it? Because these are a lot of different businesses that all have to agree to do things a certain way. And so who do you truly serve when somebody approaches IPI, and maybe tell us a little bit about more specifically what IPI does and who typically will come to IPI for help?
Well, in our opinion, partnering and collaborative partnering are owner driven. So the owner basically has the funding for it. They have the project, they have the need. And so they are the ones who really need to drive the bus. We have a lot of contractors who are very, have done a lot of partnering over the years, but even when they're talking to owners, some owners are, really interested in doing it, and others, are not. And so they try to persuade them as they can. And sometimes they have good luck with it, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, it does depend on if the owner has had the experience of a project gone wrong. They've had litigation, they've had project delays, they've had to fire the GC on the project. Typically, they're probably a little bit more open to hearing from you. But so, does the owner go to you, or do you typically come to them and have to educate them on what you do?
A little bit of both. And sometimes part of the education program is us doing a pilot project with an owner where we will go in and we'll train their staff in terms of, changing the culture from the the beatings will continue until morale improves to one that says, okay, let's figure out ways that we can solve this problem so that we all come out with something that is beneficial and that it works for everyone. And that's really what partnering is. It's just, people getting through and talking about, okay, what's the best solution for the project? Because that's what we try to do, is we put the focus on the project.
You put the focus on the project. So that's a little bit about, I want to talk more about that, because that sounds like a philosophy, and philosophies that really guide, I think, your mission into what you're doing. But talking for a minute about maybe, your IPI's claim to fame. What does the market know you for today? Like, would they say, yep, you go to IPI and they're going to walk you through a process and even manage that process of creating better project outcomes, so the beatings stop, but morale does improve? What are they? What's that claim to fame?
So really, it's sort of threefold. So IPI is unique in that our members cover all facets of the construction industry. It covers the owners, it covers the design team, covers the contractors, subcontractors, developers, anyone and everyone who has a part. And it includes the stakeholders that may be either affected by the project because it's going to inconvenience their businesses, or those that are, say, vendors in the facility. And so we serve all those people, and it's anyone whose lives are going to be touched by the project. So through our awards program, we recognize teams, and we recognize the entire project team, not just the contractor and not just the designer. So we recognize the entire project team, because them together are what makes the project. It's them working together, them collaborating, and them, doing the problem solving so that there are no claims at the end of the project. We all walk away with smiles on our faces, and everyone's happy because they've had a successful project.
And Stuart, I'd love for you to share some statistics. You actually have some listed on your website that I found personally very impressive, and just about what happens in terms of savings of cost and frustration when the owner uses a partnering process. Can you share any of those?
I sure can. I can share you some of the statistics from our 2020 awards program as well as our 2021 awards program.
Love to hear. I want to entice people to really understand the end result. We're going to be talking about how you get there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in 2020, our awards program, we had, we had 17 award-winning projects. And those 17 award-winning projects had a total construction value of $836 million. So, and through collaborative partnering, there were savings of $93 million across those 17 projects. So
wow.
13 of the 17 projects were on budget. 11 of the 17 projects were on schedule or ahead of schedule. 9 of the projects had perfect safety records, and none of them had any construction claims.
Wow.
So they invested $846,000 in partnering facilitation by all 17 teams.
Say that number again.
$846,000 was
Okay.
invested in partnering facilitation by the 17 teams.
Okay.
And the result was for every dollar that was invested in partnering facilitation, it yielded $110 savings in construction costs.
We gotta say that one more time because I'm getting my head around that. For
So
every
for
dollar,
every dollar invested in partnering facilitation, it yielded $110 in construction savings.
okay, general contractors, owners, subs, this is why you need to partner with each other on projects because if it's about, there's an old saying, Stuart, you've probably heard it, right? Which is there's never enough money to do it right the first time, but there's always enough money to do it over.
Absolutely. And
Right.
it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And if we could just get people to see it from what you just said, that one statistic right there has so much power in it because it means you've got to have the long view, the finish, at the end of the project, you have to be clear about what the goal is on time, on budget. Everybody likes each other, wants to work together again. No litigation.
Precisely.
And cost savings.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not what's on the paper at the beginning that you force people to comply with, which they can't, which leads to all the tricks and gambits and games, right, Stuart, that you know of. So I'm really excited about that statistic. And that's one of those things that, you know, I gotta even ask you, how do you get from $1 invested in project or construction partnering to 110 in savings? What comprises that savings?
Well, it's, sometimes, it's time, it's savings schedule, just working things out and coordinating between the trades and everything. They all work together and figure out, okay, I need to be here at this time, and then I can give it to this other trade so they can get in and do what they need to do. It's everyone working together to do that. So they're not working on top of each other, and they all know, and they're all, realizing what they need to do, and it's looking out for one another. It's really, partnering is all about the people. Let's face it.
And totally agree. And it's something that I really do believe strongly in, Stuart, because when we look at the construction landscape and how much growth there is going to be in the future, there's going to be massive amounts of growth. But there's also a population that has no interest in construction.
Absolutely.
And why would you, if every time you get into a project, you're dealing with frustration and working on top of each other and litigate? Who wants that? Yes, more, please. So
perhaps the litigation attorneys want that, but
oh yeah, that market's booming. But to your point, I mean, I think this is why we believe so strongly in it, because actually it can be a very fulfilling experience. And the 5 biggest problems that, and again, I won't go down that rabbit hole, that'll take too long, but the major problems in construction that we see with the growth, all of them are around communication, all of them.
Yes.
And so, maybe let's kind of get into the philosophy or approach you use. If we can get that kind of savings on projects, we can get everyone to create better outcomes, savings, all of those wonderful things we just talked about, results. What are the driving philosophies, or what's the overall arching approach?
Well, so, everyone has to train their staff and their team about collaborative partnering and how to work together and what their roles and responsibilities are. And we, attempt to drive all the decision making in partnering down to the lowest level, because it's the people in the trenches who know what's going on. They know what the issues are. They know what the problems are, and they're usually the best ones to develop a solution to it. And so they will, and if for some reason they can't come up with a solution, then we have issue resolution ladder, and and we just keep it up, going up a notch. We give them a certain amount of time to make their decisions and figure out the issues, and then if they can't, then they bump it up a level, and then they work on it.
The philosophy is, I really like this, and I hope everyone's hearing you on this. Push decision-making down to the front lines, right? People in the trenches.
Yep.
But have a mechanism by which you can move a decision, if it can't be made at the very front line, to the next. So there's actually a process by which decisions can work their way to another part of the project or somebody else involved in the project.
Right.
It's not random.
Correct. Yeah.
I like that because
Yeah.
sometimes people can make the wrong decision if they don't understand how to make the decision.
Yes. And so, it's trusting their people at the lowest levels that they can make those decisions and allowing them to make them. And so, it gets pushed up and really, if anything, gets to the top rung, it's usually about a 4 or 5 step ladder. And if anything gets to the top rung, you got a big problem, that needs to be solved. And usually, it doesn't get raised up to more than 1, maybe 2 rungs. Has been my experience, is that it gets taken care of and, the issue goes away and therefore the construction claims go away and the litigation goes away.
It seems so simple when you say it like that, Stuart, but here's the thing. When if I'm talking typically to an owner, they're not even thinking about how they don't care. They want the contract to fulfill.
They want the project done.
But here's what happens, and obviously this, but our audience, a general contractor who takes on that contract has all of these subcontractors, these trade groups that are doing things, and a lot of times these trades are not very big organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an owner who's exhausted because the team is constantly coming to them with the problems, thinking that front lines individual may not even know that the owner wants them to solve that problem.
That's certainly a possibility too, yes.
And so if a decision is made on site by somebody in the front lines or is not made or is delayed, that can push the entire project. One trade can end up delaying the entire project just by how they're managing a decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How many decisions do you think are made in a project?
Oh my, thousands a day.
Thousands a day.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a framework. So everyone who's listening should be asking themselves, does everybody involved in the project that I am on have a decision framework? And if the answer is no, it's probably time to call Stuart. But what I'm interested is can you maybe give some examples of this? I mean, so in terms of the philosophies that we just discussed, can you provide an example of where this worked really well, but typically wouldn't?
Probably the San Francisco International Airport is a huge partnering organization, and they do partnering on all their projects, regardless of what it is. And some of the more phenomenal ones is where they've rebuilt a runway, I should say, and they had maybe 3 to 4 weeks to do the project in. And they're ripping out concrete, they're putting down base, they're putting down new runways, and they come across say a pipeline that they did not know existed, and that was out of repair and they needed to replace it. And they're working 24 hours a day, and they do a lot of pre-planning ahead of time. The contractors do, along with with the owner, and they just figure out what they're going to do, what their goals are for each day, and they just go to it, and they come out. They'll do a 3 or 4 week project and they'll finish it in 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow. And the first thing
that includes dealing with unknown factors that come into play that they've had, like a pipeline that they had to replace. So
yeah, and first thing I'm thinking is, when I'm landing, I never think for a second, I wonder if all the contractors that worked on the runway got along, right? Was there any litigation on this runway? Right. But coming back to making those types of decisions, that's a great example, and they were able to do it very quickly. You also said something I like, which is the philosophy by the municipality itself, the airport.
Yes.
Is they've made the decision at that level that project partnering, construction partnering is required.
Yes. And so, I'll give another example. also with SFO is that when they're doing a new terminal, so everybody has to be engaged in the project, and so the design team, you have all these other elements that feed into it because you've got TSA, you've got security, you've got baggage handling. And just the finishes, you've got the vendors that are selling goods and food inside the terminals. You've got the janitorial staff, the maintenance staff, the customers themselves. They all play a part, and SFO includes all these groups in their partnering sessions so that they get so everyone has a chance to kind of guide the project along so that they get the best project possible.
And so I would imagine that helps in saving time with, having meetings with a smaller group of people and then having to disseminate that information to vendors, partners, customer signage, safety, all that. So it cuts down on the time, but
Yes.
does it also improve the design aspects?
Oh, absolutely, because it makes it more user friendly for everybody. So,
some people might be saying, geez, having that many people involved probably just leads to a lot of headaches, but it sounds like it's the opposite.
No, it's totally the opposite. Everyone has buy-in on the project, and therefore everyone owns it. And so, it is the best solution under the circumstances. I had a situation in my previous life where I'd asked, we were designing a project and everything, and I asked the maintenance side of the house to come in and let's take a look at it, and let's make sure that it meets your needs and everything. Well, they always complain that they didn't have enough time to do that or whatever, and then when the project's done, then they would come to me and complain. And I'd say, look, you had your chance. We wanted your involvement, that you made the decision not to. So you have to live with what you got. So.
Yeah, well, it's an important message to say to them. Hey, look, you either have input or you don't. There's a philosophy that we have that we didn't invent. It's a well-worn path of discussion, but when you involve people, they tend to own the outcome with you.
Yes.
So the saying is no involvement, no ownership. But if you involve all of those tertiary or, sort of the concentric circles of folks around the project and you get them involved and they have input, they may disagree, but at least understand why. Or two, may agree and support and enforce the decisions that were made to help make things easier throughout the project and the overall satisfaction at the conclusion of the project.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Right. Or, and the teams make commitments about, okay, you're going to be, you're going to be blocked from using your property, or you're going to be impeded from it for a certain amount of time. But you know what? By this date, you're going to have it back. You're going to be back at full operation. And they keep those commitments. And so that way, there's no anticipation with a letdown. It's just all anticipation. And when possible, they will over deliver, and that they'll get out of there earlier if they can.
Yeah. And so far I'm hearing all sorts of cost saving, all sorts of reductions in frustration, all sorts of clearer expectations. And one of our philosophies is, what starts well tends to end well.
Mm-hmm.
When you start with unclear expectations, it can, on a project with thousands of decisions are being made a day, it can only get more frustrating. So, there are probably people listening here, and we have a lot of general contractor, subcontractor, manufacturer, architects and engineers as clients. And for those, for those that are watching, I really want them all to, I feel very passionately about this concept of putting frameworks in place to make better decisions, to create better outcomes. And also, one of my philosophies is building something is meaningful. My dad, I remember driving around as a kid, and my dad put in bank pads. He was the real estate agent, but
Mm-hmm.
in the bank site. But anytime we drove by a bank that he put in, he would talk like he built it. He'd say, like, I put that there, and it was a tremendous sense of pride for him that I think could be mired by the frustration of the project. And I really believe that great communication can lead to a really great experience and probably a lot less stress on everybody involved. And so, how do we convince GCs, owners, and again, the thing I'm, Stuart, honestly, I'm concerned about is I think a lot of owners under budget and kind of throttle forward, and it's not even their fault as much as it is material prices are changing a lot right now. The labor market is constrained. And so the owner is trying to figure out if they can make money on the project. And so they've got all that to worry about. How do we help them understand why they should choose construction partnering?
Well,
What's in it for each of these groups?
Well, a project is all about the decisions that are made in it. And so, the materials that you put into it or the systems that you put into it all have an effect. And so working with a collaborative team, you can work through during the design phase in terms of, okay, what materials are available or what materials aren't as impacted by price. And so, and particularly if the contractor is involved in that, so it's maybe as a design build project, so everyone can have a say in what it is, and and talk about the availability of materials as well as the cost of them. The other part is having some flexibility relative to the price of materials, because prices are going up, and planning for that ahead of time. That's sort of what you have to do, particularly on public projects, because you're responsible to the public, and making sure that that you have that flexibility to do that.
Is there a way that you would? We talked in the beginning about time savings, cost savings, safety, litigation, and how this helps. I'm trying to think, if I'm an owner, how do I model that? How do I model the risk in the project in terms of delays and change orders? Because I don't think that most owners do a tremendously great job at that. I'm trying to think, how would I convince that owner, look, it's going to save you money in the end, but you're going to have to invest in this process to save that money?
It has to be have to have an open book process. Everyone has to be transparent and lay things out on the table and say, okay, here are the pros, here are the cons, here's where the risks are. And then in your partnering session, your partnering is also determined by the level of risk in the project. So, we have a matrix that we use. We have one that's for horizontal projects, another matrix that is for vertical projects, and then a third matrix that is for airport projects, because they're kind of a different animal in terms of that they've got a little bit of everything that's part of them.
It's a city.
It is a city, and it's more than a city.
Yeah.
But it's laying all that out on the table and laying that out in terms of, okay, if we can't do this, or this doesn't work, then we can go to plan B, and we already have plan B figured out. And so it's just having that flexibility, knowing that you've got change built into it. That way you can, keep your schedule tight, as well as keep and it's arranged so that everyone is making money. No one is losing money on it, and so it's beneficial to all the parties.
So let's take the owner and put the owner aside for a second, and let's talk about the architect, the in the OAC, if you will, the A and the C.
Mm-hmm.
How can the A convince the owner? Like, what would be some simple things philosophically that you've seen work that the architect can say to the owner, like that would be along the lines of, you need to budget for construction partnering. You need to make that a part of this project.
I think, just explaining to them the benefits of it and what it means relative to, the design phase, and then how that integrates into the construction phase, I think, is really important for the owner to understand, because, It's, you need to, the owner's going to get a better project because it's going to be more thought out than maybe it would be ordinarily. And, I always like to start partnering in the design phase if I can, because I want to get the design team and the owner working well together. And that's really, to my mind, that's really where a high performance team starts.
Stuart,
Is-
it's interesting you say that because I read somewhere, and I'd be interested to see if you think it's accurate. I read that 92% of what happens in the design phase is lost by the end of the project, and that it leads to a lot of rework, which is a big expense. So is that, do we see that a lot of people scattered looking for information after the design phase and into the construction project where it's just nobody knows where to get the information, so it just things become distorted?
Well, I've seen it where, particularly, at a school district where, they did not provide guidelines to the designers, and so the designers just put in what they always put in rather than planning for longevity, and so therefore it caused a tremendous amount of maintenance in the first 5 years of the project. That was really unnecessary. And so, and the cost of the initial cost of a project going in is somewhere in the range of 10 to 20% of the total cost over a 20-year period. And so that total cost would include, maintenance, operations, janitorial, and the salaries of the people who work in that facility.
Wow, so you're really thinking not even just project completion, you're thinking about the longevity of the what has been built.
Absolutely.
And the maintenance of what's been built. See,
yes.
That's very helpful. So I could see the architect saying, in essence, to the owner, look, how long are you going to own this for?
Mm-hmm.
What would you like your maintenance costs to look like? Let's think of the 5-year spreadsheet, not the project completion spreadsheet. What are you hoping to accomplish with this economically over the next 5 years?
Yeah. And really getting into those details, those maintenance details, there's certain types of valves that are easier to maintain than others. There are certain times, depending on where you put the splices and electrical lines, they'll fail sooner because of water intrusion and things like that. And so, it's, you really have to get into that minutia in order to make a facility, design a facility as well as construct a facility that's going to have a low long-term cost to the owner.
I love that. So you've just shifted that for me. This is really helpful for, I think, a lot of the folks that are going to listen to this, which is you're shifting it from cost of the project to long-term. And,
yes.
and to me, that's just, what is the long-term operating costs associated with this project? That's going to help make decisions at every phase. It could be as simple as, some of the last mile things, like, how are you managing light in the building?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. We have an electrical contractor who knows how to, to install systems that make sure that lights are only on when they're supposed to be on, but not anytime when they're not. That's a question I don't think you're thinking about when you're saying, I want to build a 5-story, 15,000, square foot commercial space. So if I'm a general contractor, I would almost think, I would want to say, I want to work with owners. Part of my owner profile that I would want to work with, an architect profile I would want to work with, is ones that believe in construction partnering, because ultimately it'll be less strain on my team, and I'll be working in environments where I'm less likely to experience litigation or delays or frustration.
We always talk about, owners being the owner of choice and architects being the architect of choice because of how they see things and how they design things, and then contractors being the contractor of choice because, they get in, they partner, they work with everyone, and, and the project gets done smoother and faster and with fewer problems.
And taking that of choice, I really like that concept. I think that everyone who's listening to this right now has to make a decision that whether or not you want to play in this game of changing your philosophies. If you want to be low bid wins mentality, you'll get business. How hard is it going to be on your organization? But if you want to be in a game where people are very thoughtful about the long-term effects of the project, that's a decision on what type of a customer you're going after.
Yes,
what type
absolutely.
of a provider you're going after. What I might say, and I'm interested to see your opinion, is the trades. I think the trades have their general contractors of choice.
Absolutely.
And I think the trade should be thinking along the same lines, and probably thinking something along the lines of when they're working with a general contractor, that they want the general contractor to come to them in advance and get advice on constructability, not just the price point at which they need to be to get awarded the work.
Well, it would be, I would say it would be constructability. It would also, in terms of schedule, when do they need to be in to do certain aspects of their job, and when can they be out, and how can they interface? It's those areas of interface that are always the problem areas on a project. When you've got, plumbing that connects to electrical, and the inside going into the outside.
Exactly. But again, it's a business decision for these subcontractors to say, and I really encourage subcontractors to start talking to the generals that they'd like to work with and saying, look, we're looking for generals that believe in this concept of construction partnering, bringing us into the fold before the project to let them know what, get our opinions on how this project should go, at least from our perspective. Being at the table early, not low price. If it's low price, send that work to another subcontractor.
And I know subcontractors that, depending on who the contractor is that they're bidding to or proposing to, they're going to adjust their price because they have the knowledge that either they're going to be very easy to work with, or they're going to be very difficult to work with. And so, the price goes accordingly. And, and if the contractor is more difficult to work with, or the owner even, they're going to get paid for it. They're going to make sure that they cover it.
I heard, go ahead.
I was going to say, one general contractor I was talking to, was telling me, he says, I don't assume risk. He says, I price it.
I like that. Everyone who's listening should write that down. Don't assume risk, price it.
Mm-hmm.
Not every project is a great project. And I think learning how to say no can actually help you grow your business and really wanting to grow your business because you actually enjoy it. That's a good thing. And I've heard a friend say, he now actually works for me. He was a subcontractor. He worked in a fairly good sized business. And he said, we had what we called win-win pricing. So when 5 GCs came to us all asking for pricing, we had our win-win pricing, which is we had the one that we wanted to win, which got a better price. And then we had 4 that we variously prices that were higher. And either they got the award and we won because, to your point, they had priced in the the cost of frustration. And on the other side of that, they, won if their favorite general contractor won the bid. So either way, it works out. So I think this is important for everybody to kind of decide in advance what type of entity do you want to work with, whether you're the architect and what kind of owner, general contractor, the owner subs, and what general contractors you want to work with on construction. This is important. So kind of moving to the future here for a second. We've covered some great philosophies, some things that are really important to think about, maybe some business changing thought processes, for different people involved in the project. What do you see coming in the immediate future? From your vantage point, is construction going to get, are we going to see a huge amount of construction projects coming? What do you see happening with pricing and labor markets? What do you generally see as some of the challenges coming?
I know that here in California, there's a lot of pent up demand for construction projects. Both in infrastructure, in hospitals and schools. I mean, there's just a tremendous need for that, and I anticipate that it's very similar, throughout the nation,
Yeah.
and probably throughout the world. And so, and the trades, have not been able to attract the labor that they need in order to continue to, uh, you know, to keep people out to replace those who are retiring and have retired. And so I think that's going to be, a difficult problem to deal with in the future. I see technology, assisting it, but really technology is only going to go so far because really it's the people that make the projects.
100%. 100% agree with that. And what about the people coming into the market? It's you know, we see a fair amount of construction companies where you've got a lot of mature, experienced veterans, but we're not seeing the next generation is enthusiastically jumping into the mix. What do we need to do?
I have a friend who actually has been doing it. He's a retired carpenter, and he actually started a program at a high school with that is primarily disadvantaged kids, and was teaching them some of the basic skills, sort of a pre-apprenticeship program, if you will, about carpentry, and teaching them about the math and how they calculate things and figure things out, and basically showing the students, that there could be a path into the trades for them. And so, and those who did not excel in it, well, they realized that, it really wasn't for them. So,
Interesting. Well, I think the thing that I would add to what you're saying is I think we have to make sure. I think there are a lot of people out there that have this altruistic drive, right? They want to help. They want to make the world a better place. I think we have to position the construction industry as a place where that's sorely needed. It's not about, can you do some sort of specialty work on a job site? It's really about all the people that are involved and making that a better experience for everybody, rather than just, lowest person on the totem pole gets the most, frustration in the worst job.
It not only is it a job, but it's also a social experience. And so, when you get along with people, it makes it so much easier and so much better.
I hope people write that down. That's a reframe for me. Construction is a social experience. That really brings that home for me. I'm so glad you said that, because to me, I think most people now are much more globally conscious and positioning construction as a social experience rather than just a task. I think is something that will appeal to the generations that are coming into the workforce now. So I like it a lot.
And those, and those that, I mean, it's an area where you can make a decent living too. So,
yeah, and provide a lot of good for other people. So,
yeah.
there's these two questions sort of in closing that I wanted to ask, and then I'm going to kind of summarize our conversation a little bit here. But, in terms of how IPI is participating in this change, and thinking about what's going to be the next 10 years, I really like people to think in terms of, when they make decisions, how do you make decisions that are going to make you feel good 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years from now? And I like people to always think not just about the 10 minutes. Some think about the 10 months, but really think, where am I going to be in relation to the construction industry as an owner, an architect, or contractor? Where do I want to be, or where do I want my company to be in 10 years? What do you think the biggest change we're going to see, some of the biggest changes we're going to see in the next 10 years as it relates to construction?
I mean, I think technology is going to change, and I think that probably materials are going to change. I see a transition moving into more systems relative, than just, individual materials. And, and it's being driven by the environment, by the need to make buildings more efficient, energy efficient. And so I see that, as sort of the big changes. But the reality is that, all those things are not going to change, the personal relationships, because that's really what makes the building come together. As I said, it's a social activity. And so you're always going to have those interpersonal relationships, and you have to work through those interpersonal relationships to bring everything home, and to make it so it's a fun time, and that everyone walks away with a smile on their face.
You know what, I like that as the end goal, and that's really what drove me into my world, which was, it was construction, and sort of the first interaction I saw was two people lying to each other, knowing they were lying to each other, and thinking, this is fascinating. How does this happen? And then really getting to the root of it with the two of them, and both of them feeling very apologetic and sort of admitting that it was just the way they've always done it, and they realized what they were doing was wrong. And it's almost this trance that you can get people out of. And what the result of that is this great relationship. And when you look back on your life, you want to be able to say that was part of what you accomplished, not just the building itself, but how did you make other people's lives better? And I like that seems to be an undercurrent of what IPI is all about. How do you think you'll participate in the next 10 years in this revolution? Will it be by driving construction partnering through to more projects? Will it be expanding into different types of projects, public versus private? How will you participate?
Well, we serve the private as well as public, and we serve everybody who's in the construction industry. So we will continue to do that, and we'll continue to do more research and figuring out different things that we can do, in order to figure out what the best practices are, and then we'll be developing educational materials based on those best practices.
Well, anything we can do to help that is great. Research and data always help engineer, architect minds get there. You know what I mean? It's always nice to talk about relationships, but facts and numbers and some of the things you shared in the beginning are really going to help with that. And certainly we'd be happy to participate and help out in any way we can. I want to go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say something, but I forgot what it is. So hopefully it'll come back to me here.
Well, what I want to summarize a couple of key points here, which is, first of all, construction partnering has a meaningful impact on lives. It has a meaningful impact on the costs and the timelines of a project. And I think it all starts with this philosophy that, any project is a social experience. And the goal should always be to create great outcomes and great relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
In the process, that there's just such a benefit. But one of the big points for me was we have to do a better job of thinking about the project 5 years after completion. Total cost of ownership, not what did it cost to put the building in place.
Yes.
And to think about who you would involve in the project, that it may not be part of the construction, but maybe one of the users.
It could be the users, or it could be, even a utility bringing service to the project, because that can have tremendous delays in a project as well.
So I would call this stakeholder management, but being creative and not thinking, wow, we don't need more people providing input, but instead, actually, we do need more people providing input. It helps impact all the decisions. And knowing that thousands of decisions could be made on a project in any given day, we have to have a framework for making decisions that we push down to the lowest levels, or I should say the front lines. And then a way of only letting decisions trickle up when it's absolutely necessary, empowering our people. So, Stuart, if people wanted to get in touch with you, they're thinking, you know what, I need, this could be, business changing for my, for my business as an owner, an architect, or a contractor, how do they get in touch with you?
So our website is www.partneringinstitute.org. So they can go onto the website. There's all sorts of information there. We have a bookstore where a variety of materials are available and booklets about partnering and best practices and everything like that is on there. My email address.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but this might be important. Can say an architect or a contractor or an owner, could they just pick up the materials and do this themselves?
Yeah, I mean, there's a charge for that. Yes, I mean,
Okay.
it's a charge
So
for the
train
materials.
trainer, so to speak.
Yeah, we provide training. Also, we have people within the organization who who will go out and do training and try and to work through with an owner or a contractor, whatever, in terms of changing their culture to a more collaborative one. We have my email address. The best one to use is ed@partneringinstitute.org.
Well,
So
first of all, we will be sending people to your train the trainer right away. But Ed, in terms of who typically contacts you, who is it? Who's typically reaching out to you?
I get calls from owners, I get calls from facilitators, I get calls from contractors. I get calls from pretty much everyone. Depends if they're looking for a facilitator. The other thing that I did not mention is that we certify facilitators. And so we have a certification program for facilitators, and based upon their level of, the number of facilitations that they've done, and that, so we do that. And so we serve as a clearinghouse, for facilitators when someone is looking for someone either in their area or with a particular expertise.
And if they want to find somebody in their area, they could just reach out to you.
Yes,
And
they
you
can.
should.
Yes.
This is important because there are facilitators out there who are skillful, but maybe not certified. And I think that certification really validates that they've got all of the components necessary to not just create a great experience, but a great outcome, similar to the outcomes and the results that you've been talking about. So I'm excited about that. And Stuart, I really appreciate you being on this call today. I know that you've helped lots of people, hopefully thousands of people, with the information you've shared today. Is there anything in closing that you want to share with our audience?
Just appreciate the time to be able to spend with you, and partnering is a wonderful objective. I learned about it on a construction project that was beginning to have some problems with it, and and we had a subcontractor that had a claim against the project and just wasn't moving, and so we ended up bringing in partnering, and we kept it for the entire project. And so, and it made a huge difference in terms of what we received as in terms of a product, as well as the interpersonal relationships within our own organization. The maintenance department that I said that didn't have any time, well, they complained at the end of the project because the wrong faucet, or at least they were unhappy with the faucets that were installed. And so, so the plumbing contractor kind of came back and says, I'll tell you what, I'll restock, anything that you use during the warranty period, says, I'll restock it.
Wow.
And so they kind of, the maintenance said, okay, that'd be fine. And that just went away. That problem went away. And, it was a great move, on the general and the plumbing contractor to do that. So,
and it all came from starting with goodwill and better communication.
Absolutely.
And you'll do more for your friends than you're going to do for someone you don't know. So it's, well, people do a lot of wonderful things in the world for people they don't know. When it's your friend, you're going to help them out.
Definitely. Particularly if you want to keep them as a friend.
Exactly. Well, this has been extremely informative. And Stuart, I may have you come back if you'd be open to it in the future and talk about maybe some specific examples with us, and maybe a little bit more about your training program and your certification.
Be happy to, yes.
But this has been another episode of The Construction Revolution. Stuart Seiden with IPI. Get in touch with this gentleman. He's going to make your world a lot better, and he's going to help you probably build some great relationships. And I'm Matthew Newberger. Until we see each other again, keep improving your business, and we can't wait to see and hear about your results. Thanks again, Stuart.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it.